On this week's podcast, we talked to legendary game show host Todd Newton. Hosted many different shows, hosted Press Your Luck, hosted Hollywood Showdown. He now hosts Monopoly Millionaires Club. He hosts a bunch of different game shows. He's done reporting work for E! He's done reporting work for many different channels. And we sit down and we talk about what he's gone through in his career, the ups and downs, starting from radio, making his way to Hollywood, and being on the streets trying to find an agent just to make ends meet to pay his bills. And I get to learn a lot about the game show industry. He wrote a whole book about it, how he's met many different types of contestants, and you get a whole rich history of what game shows were all about. Now let's go behind the mic with Todd Newton. Let's go back to 1990, if we can, just so people can kind of get an idea of who you are.
Well, sure. In 1990, I was working on the radio in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, and I always knew, well, not always, but from a very young age, 12, 13, I knew that I wanted to be on television. Never really felt that acting was right for me. I was very inspired and very moved by men like Johnny Carson and Bob Barker, who to me at that time seemed to be entertaining millions of people just by being themselves. I wanted to figure out exactly what that was and how I could fit into that world. And the more I learned about these men, and in addition to those two, the Richard Dawsons and the Gene Rayburns and people that were really capitalizing on the hosting world, I realized that they started in radio. And radio happened to be where I was led. And when I went out to Los Angeles to do some television work for the first time, I made the most of that trip. It was on someone else's dime, and I didn't have a lot of money at the time, and did my best to kind of scour the streets of Hollywood looking for an agent and a representation, and I found somebody that kind of shared my vision and recognized my passion. And to this day, I still believe in surrounding yourself with people that share your vision. I think that's how you get any place in this life. And the rest is history. It's a constant work in progress. You know, I'm constantly evolving, constantly growing, as I think we all are. But it was a wonderful period in my life, and it's led to many great things.
So you brought up Rayburn and you brought up Dawson and those type of hosts. What led you to hosting game shows and going that route on television?
Well, when I was at E! Entertainment, I realized that I had a very valuable opportunity presented to me. You know, E! was much smaller at the time, and they allowed hosts to kind of figure out who they were on camera and what they wanted to be on camera. And when I auditioned for my first game show in 1999, a show called Hollywood Showdown on Game Show Network, which was created by game show pioneer Sandy Stewart, I realized almost instantly that game shows encompassed everything I loved about television: the live aspect of it, the one-on-one interaction with contestants, the opportunity to share moments with complete strangers when they win what can sometimes be life-changing sums of money. You know, back then it was $10,000, $15,000, but today on the show I co-host, Monopoly Millionaires Club, it's $1 million, and you get to share that once-in-a-lifetime moment with people, and it's a moment of extreme joy and happiness and elation, and I'm thrilled to be there. And whether it's on television or hosting the live stage version of The Price is Right, which we're currently on tour with that right now. It's a job like no other. And, I'm very fortunate in the fact that I get to do it every night in a different city across America. But for each contestant, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm honored to be there.
So you mentioned Hollywood Showdown. You hosted Whammy, All New Press Your Luck, Russian Roulette, and a bunch of other shows. Can you talk about how each show was different for you, and also where the similarities were in hosting these game shows?
Well, I didn't host Russian Roulette. That was my friend Markel Wahlberg, but he hosted that as well while I was hosting Whammy. So we had a wonderful synergy going there at Game Show Network at the time. Well, each show is similar in the sense that I get to live out all of the wonderful moments that I just mentioned before. And, that's the beauty of game shows. I believe that game shows are the only real form of reality television. There's no scripting. The contestants aren't professionals. There's no producer standing off to the side telling them how to do it, or let's do it again. You get one take, you get one shot, and what you see on television is what's going on the stage. So I enjoy that aspect of it very much. The differences are each show has kind of grown, as American audiences become more and more familiar and more comfortable with the term $1 million. It doesn't pack quite the punch that it used to. I mean, it does if you win it, but if you're just seeing it on television, everybody gives away $25,000 or $100,000. You gotta up the stakes. So each show has kind of been bigger. And when I hosted Family Game Night on the Hub Network, that was wonderful for me because I'm a father, and at the time my kids were young enough where they loved those games and they loved that show. So to be able to earn a living doing something that your kids think is really cool is a rarity for a man. So I was very grateful for that. And now Monopoly Millionaires Club is on the air in syndication. We kick off our second season this weekend, and we've already given away more money in a shorter amount of time than any other show in history. And it's very exciting for me to be a part of that.
So talking about game shows, you've done TV, movies. I've seen you've done voicing for video games like Family Feud and reporting for E! Do you have a favorite of all these different moments, or do they all reflect in the same way?
Well, my favorite thing about my career is the fact that I get to juggle so many balls at one time. I'm not pigeonholed into just one aspect. I'm not just a voiceover artist. I'm not just a television host. I'm not, just a live stage performer. I get to do them all in perfect harmony, and they all complement one another. They all work together. They all feed each other. So whether it's being on camera or being on the radio or writing books or doing a one-man play, which I'll be launching in the beginning of 2016, each is my favorite. It's like your children. You love them all unconditionally, but there are things about each one that really stands out as something special, something unique, and something treasured. And that's how I feel about my work.
So going back to the game show aspect, as you were discussing, that contestants are not really prepping, they're kind of just jumping on game shows. Can you tell us the process for you and explain your preparation for kind of saying, all right, I'm getting there and I'm hosting this show today. What's your preparation for being on set?
Well, I think Merv Griffin told me once that as a game show host, you're the ringleader. You're the one who is there to facilitate everything that's happening. You're the one that's there to keep the ball rolling, and I agree with that to a great extent. But Bob Barker also taught me that the real star of the game show is the contestant. So although I do need to know the rules of the games and anticipate outcomes and prepare myself to react in a variety of different ways at the drop of a hat, it's really about the contestant. And each contestant has a story. Each contestant has a background. And I believe that one of my key roles as a game show host is to expose that background story, to introduce them to the audience in a way that's personable, in a way that creates some sort of emotional investment for the viewer. A lot of the game show greats will tell you that the key to a successful game show is getting the audience to play back and yell back at their television in the first 60 seconds. And I don't think an audience member or viewer is going to do that if they don't feel some connection to the contestants. So I like to present the contestants as people. I like to tell their story. You can say, this is Helen from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She's going to play for $1,000. Or you can say, this is Helen, who's a retired postal worker and the grandmother of 6, who wants to put her last 2 grandchildren through university. And if she can win this game, those kids are going to college. All right, Helen, let's play. Well, now the audience has something to root for. And I tend to host the game shows that I host through the eyes of the contestants. It's a lot like when you have kids, holidays become cool again because you start to see the holidays through the eyes of your kids. Well, that's how I play the games. I play them through the eyes of the contestants. And because of that, no 2 games, no 2 shows are ever the same.
So most recently, and you started to discuss this, you've hosted Family Game Night, and now you're hosting Monopoly Millionaires Club. I know we discussed some differences between the early shows and now because there's more money at stake, but would you say there's any dynamics that are different now than there were back in the early 2000s?
Well, I think the foundations are the same. You know, you either have games of skill or you have games of chance. And for instance, on Price is Right, we have Plinko, which is a combination of both. You got to have a little bit of skill to get your Plinko chips, but once you have the Plinko chips, they become complete chance. It becomes complete chance of how much money you win. So it depends on what the viewer likes. That's why shows like The Price is Right, that consists of over 85 different pricing games, I think will always stand at the forefront because it gives the viewer a variety. Then you've got your traditional Q&A games like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where it's just trivia based, and a lot of people enjoy that. Jeopardy has built a very, very successful career off just basic question and answer. So it's really up to the viewer, and it's our job to make sure that the viewer's expectations are exceeded, I believe, because attention spans are a lot shorter now. People want big, bright, flashy stages and big sums of money. And if we can deliver that like we do on Monopoly Millionaires Club, I think we've got a winner.
Now, I wanted to go back to Whammy a little bit because that was actually personally one of my favorite shows, and I think that reflected your personality the best in my eyes. Can you explain kind of how you got into that show? Because that was kind of a show where it was more randomized prizes, a little bit of trivia. You got a little bit of combination of both.
Yeah, well, that came about as a result of my relationship with Game Show Network, and obviously, Press Your Luck is one of the games that will always be a fan favorite. And when they decided to bring it back in 2002, they had two ways they could go. They could do an all-new set with an all-new host and just keep the concept the same and make it, as I said, bigger and brighter, or they could stick to the traditional roots and keep a lot of the original fans happy. So we actually shot two pilots for that. We shot a pilot with myself hosting on the big set, and then we shot another pilot with Peter Tamarkin, the original host, hosting. And they tested them out and they focus grouped them, and I think the newer version just barely won out there, and I'm glad that it did because I was certainly a fan of the show back in the 80s, and I was very familiar with the game and I knew the ins and outs of it, so I was honored to do 165 episodes of that show, and it still airs in reruns, which is nice because it's over 10 years old now, so it's nice to go back and see myself at that stage in my life, but. It was a really well-structured game, and it was created by people that truly love game shows. That was the wonderful thing about Game Show Network at the time, and I believe it still is. All the executives truly loved game shows, and they cared about the quality of the show, and they wanted to make sure that the true game show aficionados would be pleased, and they did a heck of a job with that. And I think the longevity of the reruns is a testament to that. But yeah, it's excitement, it's play along, it's interactive. People love sitting at home and shouting big bucks, no whammies. They love deciding if they would stop right there with $1,000 or if they would press their luck one more time. It keeps you on the edge of your seat, and that's a winning ingredient, I think.
Now, I'm just curious because when I was watching the show, whose idea was it for the double whammies?
Well, I have to give that credit to the executives. I think that there had to be some updates. It had been close to 30 years since the original version aired, and I don't think a little cartoon guy dancing across the screen was going to create enough drama. I think they had to up the stakes a little bit. So that's exactly what they did, and it was always fun watching them load the double whammy materials up above the contestant's head because we never knew exactly what was in there. We had a young kid named Dixon, whose job it was just to be raised up in this big, this giant box and just sit up there. And sometimes he'd be up there for close to an hour before somebody would hit a double whammy. Other times it would be instant. And you never knew exactly what he was going to drop out of that box. But when we'd bring him down at the end of taping, he'd be dripping sweat. But he was a young kid and, just getting his start in the world of television. And he was an original fan of the show. And so he was thrilled to be able to do it. I think that's a pretty good piece to have on your resume.
So I see, as you said before, you juggle a lot of balls, and I see you're an author. You wrote a book called "Life in the Bonus Round," a game show host's road to success and fulfillment. Can you tell me what that book's about?
Well, that book is part one of my autobiographical series, and I say part one because if I have my say, I've still got a lot of living to do and a lot of working to do. But it's been a pretty exciting journey for me, and I had a wonderful childhood in the Midwest. I remember the first dollar I ever made. My friend Tony Schumann and I would go door to door after school telling jokes in the second grade, and we did that just so we could buy baseball cards. And immediately, when people would laugh at my jokes or compliment me or pay me for them, I started to think to myself, well, this is all right. And my grandmother was a comedian during World War II, and I remember seeing her later in life performing in churches and banquet halls, and I could see the hold she had over the audience. And I spent a lot of time in Branson, Missouri, which was like a mini Nashville in the Midwest, watching great entertainers throughout my childhood and seeing them make my parents laugh and my parents clap. And that's when I was really introduced to show business. And through my windy road, I've met a lot of people that have taught me a lot of great things. And some of those experiences have been positive and some of them have been not so positive, but you learn from everything. And I've taken my fair share of bumps along the way. There's no question about that. But it's been a life that I wouldn't trade for anything. So Life in the Bonus Round, a game show host's road to success and fulfillment, is the first book, and it's filled with open, honest tales of my journey in hopes that people can take little pieces of things that I've learned and done and use them in their own journeys. And the feedback from it has been absolutely incredible. The book was just named Best Autobiography at the Beverly Hills Book Awards, and that's a huge honor for me. And what I'm really, really proud of with Life in the Bonus Round is the fact that with every purchase, a child benefits. And what I mean by that is the book is available on my website, which is toddnewtononline.com, and I'll give that again. It's also available on Amazon. But with every purchase, my charity, Newton Fund for Kids, receives a wonderful donation that provides state-of-the-art pediatric health care to children who are sick or have been injured and whose family is not able to pay the medical bills. So it's going to a great cause, and a lot of children all across America are benefiting from this. So I hope that people will go to Amazon or go over to toddnewtononline.com and order the book. And I hope they'll enjoy it. I hope their lives will be enriched at least a little bit from it. And I hope they'll fall asleep tonight knowing that they've done a good thing for the kids.
Wow, what an unbelievable story. I have one more question for you. And with the game shows, and I've seen a lot of game show hosts go on television. They talk about some of their stories of odd incidents or weird contestants. Or have you had any of those interesting contestants before on any of the game shows?
Well, the funny thing is, and that's a great question. I always love answering it. The funny thing is, I have the great benefit of being able to host year round. When you do a television show, you shoot 4 or 5 episodes in a day, and the season's over before you know it. You've got the whole 13 weeks done in about 10 days, and then you just wait until the next set of tape dates come up. But when I'm not taping the game show, I'm touring America as the host of the Price is Right live stage show. And right now I'm in Texas. We're performing in Tyler, Texas tomorrow night, and we're performing in San Antonio on Sunday, and then we go down to Alabama and Mississippi. So my point is, every single night of the year, I get to be a game show host, and I'm so grateful for that. And because of that, I do believe that I've been picked up and spun around and hugged and kissed by more contestants, men and women, than just about any other host in history. And it's when you're doing 150, 200 shows a year, and you've been doing it for 13 years, like I've been lucky enough to do, those numbers really add up. And picking me up and spinning me around ain't no easy feat. I'm 6'3", 210 pounds. So
wow.
It takes a pretty excited contestant to whip me around. But I'll take it, and I've been dropped, and I've been squeezed, and I've been sore the next day from it. But it's the greatest job in the world. And Bob Barker said to me once, he said, Todd, when you do what we do for a living, you never feel like you're going to work. And he's absolutely right. It's never felt like a job. I've never felt job pressure. I wake up every morning. I can't wait to put on the Magic Game Show host suit and go to work.
Wow. And then also, I know you are on the radio. Do you want to plug that out a little bit also? Because I know you're on from
Well,
10
sure.
to 2.
I do a radio show on a radio station called Now 96.3 in my hometown of St. Louis, and it's nice to be able to, with modern technology, it's nice to be able to do that show from wherever I am. So today we'll be doing the St. Louis radio show from Dallas, Texas, and it adds a little bit of flair, a little bit of excitement, a little bit of culture to it, and things are good, man. Things are always good.
All right, Todd, it's been a pleasure. I've wanted to have you on the show for a while because I enjoy a lot of the game shows you've hosted over the years. So it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, likewise, my and your interviewer, and I wish you all the success in the world with your show.
Thanks, I appreciate it.